Finish the story. We're not quite going. You know what? I forgot to pick out a couple of so, the Lord be with you.
Also with you.
Dear Father, we are grateful this morning for the creation you've made and rejoice in it. In the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
So thank you for being here on another perfect September day.
He's done it again.
Stop. God has done it again. God is showing off this month, I have to say, with the beautiful weather we've had. I'm going to give you a little bit of context. We're going to be talking about creation and suggest the origins of things. And we're going to use the two creation stories in the book of Genesis. So the context for that, Genesis, as its name suggests, is an account of origins. Origins of the cosmos, origins of humanity, and origins of the people of Israel. So the first 11 chapters deal with the origin of the cosmos and humanity. And then beginning in chapter 12, a new story starts. And that is the story of the origins of the people of Israel. Now, in the first 11 chapters, we have the creation, and then we have the very vivid story of the desperate plight of the whole creation because of human sin. So you might remember the line from the Noah story about how everything was only evil all the time. Desperate situation. But then chapter 12 is the call of Abraham. And in that story, the seeds are planted for the redemption of the whole earth. So that's the big picture of the book of Genesis. But as I said, we're going to look just at the first two chapters, the two creation stories. And we'll divide it up so that we look at chapter 1 for the first story today and the second story tomorrow. And each week we'll deal with the issues that arise from those two stories. And the two stories are very, very different from each other. It's a lot of fun because they really kind of lead us to two different places, both being true and both being important. So why, first of all, are they so different, these two stories? And as you might guess, they come from two different sources. And the Old Testament people are just tediously invested in arguing about these two sources. Many sources, actually, but we'll boil it down to two. You know, I don't know if that's how they get their grants. Maybe that's it. I have sometimes regretted that I didn't go into academia, but when you come across stuff like this, it's like, oh my gosh, I dodged a bullet. Tedious. But in the briefest possible way, I'm going to boil it down to two things. One source is known as the Yahwist source, and the other source is known as the priestly source. So the Yahwist source is called that because of its use of the covenant name of God, Yahweh. It tends to be very vivid in its style, earthy diction, and it anthropomorphizes God. So God has a lot of human characteristics. The priestly source is called that because of its emphasis on the liturgy and worship of Israel. It uses a high literary style, and it tends to emphasize the sovereignty and transcendence of God. So, looking at your text there, which is chapter 1, Yahwist or priestly? Joanne says Yahweh. What's the literary style? What's the depiction of God? High or low? Okay, so you're right. This is the priestly source. And let's actually look at some of the literary characteristics of it. What do you see? Petition. And where do you see that? Right. Repetition. Beginning and ending clauses are always the same. There'll be a little segment with the same beginning clause, same ending clause, right? God says, and it was so. What else? What other literary characteristics? And it was so. And it was so. Yes.
In progress.
There's a closing segment and an opening segment for the next, and those next round. What else? Let's call that, you want to call that parallelism? Let's call that parallelism. L or L? Okay. All right, and apparently this text is not quite poetry, but it's more like poetry than prose in the Hebrew. A very high literary style. Who's the main character? God. And what are the characteristics of God? He's powerful. Powerful. How do you see that he's powerful?
He commands things. He says, let this happen, let this happen. That's like an imperative.
It's an imperative. And then what's your closing clause? Let there be, and it was so. I mean, there's just like no question. God says, let there be, and it is. It's wonderful. Wonderful. Powerful. It's wonderful or awe-inspiring. What else?
It's very orderly.
Very orderly.
Those things will need time. So.
Yep. Very orderly.
He's very judgmental.
In what sense?
He says it's good.
He takes pleasure in it.
Well, that could be.
And he judges it.
Or he
He
evaluates.
evaluates. He evaluates. And what's his evaluation?
Well, he likes himself. or at least his own work.
Indeed. So, yeah, when he says
He's very self-affirming.
Self-affirming. So what does that suggest? Like if you make something and then you stand back and look at it and say
pretty good.
It's very good, what are you feeling? Proud of yourself. Proud of yourself and a bit. What else? Confident. What else? Joy. And the ownership of it. Ownership of it. It's yours and you're kind of thrilled with that. Right?
This comes from omniscience.
Omniscience. Yeah.
I would say glorious, because there are all these wonderful things happening day after day. There's light and waters and vegetation. So I would say glorious.
Glorious. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I've run out. I've stopped writing. Glorious. I think too, if I've made something and I look at it and I say, that's pretty good. I love it. Right? I love it. And I want to protect it and take care of it. It's like, wow, that's really good. And I sort of love it.
Unless it's dinner and then you want to devour it.
Even then, I might think, oh. Yeah, Dave will devour it for me.
And you're glad to see that happen.
Yes, indeed. What else about God in the story? Very hands-on. He's very hands-on. He is in charge of the whole thing. Yep. What?
Another thing about the literary style, getting ahead of it, it's more abstract. He creates living creatures, forms of them, but we don't know anything more about what they do.
It's very abstract, really, isn't it? And we're going to see that that's very different from the next story.
It's sequential. I mean, literally, one thing has to be created for the next thing to be created.
It's inspired language.
Yes. It's powerful. It's very powerful. Yeah. What about this thing about God resting? A lot of work. Very, very exhausting.
Yeah, big week.
It's a human description. God needs to. Wouldn't think of God needing to rest. So there's a humanity there that one might not expect.
Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like he's not this supernatural thing, but a natural living creature.
Okay.
That's very human.
Well,
Let me
I wonder
suggest-
if it's that he needs rest or that he's exercising restraint or that he's reached a point at which he thinks maybe this is a point at which not to do more, which is different from saying
I'm tired.
I can't do more.
Right.
Or leadership.
Well, let's go with that, Paul, because don't forget that this is a priestly source. And what are the priests interested in? The law,
So that would be
worship,
rest.
and the seventh day is a day of rest. And does this not set up for us the pattern of 6 days of human work, seventh day of rest? When they depict God doing all of this work for 6 days, enjoying and admiring it, taking pleasure in his work, if you will, and then on the seventh day, rests.
And remember, one of the ways that people interpreted the Sabbath was as an expression of human freedom not to work.
Yeah.
That they weren't slaves. A slave worked every day. A free person had time not to work. And so maybe this is an example of God's freedom.
Right? All right, let's move to the humans. What are the characteristics of the humans in the story? Actually, there's one more we just need to say about God. What about the fact that he speaks?
Very human.
Again,
Very anthropomorphic.
okay. What is speaking?
That's a really good point. The whole idea of the word. This is like the start of the use of words as having this incredible generative power.
Great. Word. And we definitely want to come back to that. To me, the fact that he speaks implies a certain personalness to God, doesn't it? It's a language, and we're going to come back and talk about that a little bit more. But now let's go to the characteristics of the humans. They were in his image. In his image. What else? Male and female? They were fruitful. Not yet, but they will be.
Well, you have
They were blessed. What's the point of having a whiteboard if you can't read what's on it, but whatever.
We don't know whether it's them or their presence in the whole but with their addition, things are very good.
Very good. God looks over it and says, it is very good.
They have dominion.
They have dominion. So what does that suggest? A certain amount of their own power, right?
And responsibility.
And responsibility. They've been given by God a certain amount of authority and power for themselves.
It kind of makes them more important than we.
It's a very high view of ourselves, isn't it?
Appropriately.
Yes. I mean, yes, that's one of the things we need to learn is that there is a high view of us. So now, I've talked about the tedious work on the sources of these stories, and I'll admit that it's useful, it's very useful. But here's the thing that's even more useful that these Old Testament people have provided for us. They have picked away at how this story is similar and dissimilar to other Mesopotamian origin stories, ancient, very old stories. And I think that this understanding is really key to understanding what this whole text is about. Those stories start with pre-existing eternal matter and gods emerge from that matter. And they're powerful gods of a sort, sun, moon, sea monsters. But having emerged from this primordial goo, they start to rival each other. And they create humans to serve them, to provide food for them, to have sex with them, to be warriors on their behalf. And in many of the stories, there are heroes who are part god, part man. You might remember Gilgamesh, who was one of those heroes of the ancient stories. So this story is very, very different, isn't it? There's a hint of pre-existing matter, but God creates from it. He does not emerge from it. There's a real emphasis on the transcendence of God over everything that is created and everything that exists. He says, as we noted, let there be, and they be. There are no rivals for God in this story. So the sun and the moon and the sea monsters could not disobey God, even if they wanted to. They hold no threat or rivalry for him. And the humans, while they are in his image, it's not because of interbreeding, right? The humans are male and female, and they have sex only with themselves. So this, I think, is why this text exists, why it was edited and brought together and put into the scriptures, and why it's really clear for us to understand it deeply. It's the point of the account is not to provide a historically accurate account of the creation. It's actually to provide theological reality for people of all time. So perhaps it was written to refute or rebut some of those ancient stories, but it's valuable for them. For us, it also rebuts the medieval superstitions and the Renaissance humanism. It's a story that provides a theological truth for people of all times. So, what about us? You know, it wasn't just the ancients who got this wrong. What kind of errors do we make? Errors in assumption based on our scientific knowledge of origins. So for instance, this story is 7 days. What's our timeline of creation? Oh, billions and billions of years. What does that do to us? We get so small. We are to the vanishing point in significance. And this story is very earth-centered. What is our knowledge of the scope of the cosmos? There is no center. And how big is it? It's unmeasurable beyond our concept. Yeah, I mean, we sent the Webb telescope out there to do what is it, 13 billion light years and stuff. It's incalculable. And what does that do to us? They're even really
It depends.
Okay.
All right.
You say God invested in this little dot of the universe and did all that to make it happen. And the fact that it happened is stunning.
It is stunning, isn't it? And it's a real corrective for our mistaken assumptions about our significance. What about, what's our modern view of our value in the creation?
The essence of
Okay, that's one way we can look at it. What's another way we can do it?
I mean, I think we give ourselves a lot of credit.
We give ourselves a lot of credit, don't we?
Well, maybe one way of asking that question is, what's the standard of value? How do you evaluate? On what basis do you evaluate anything? Is it on mass? Is it on length of time? Is it on power? How do you evaluate?
Value. So how about, are we good for the creation or are we bad?
You haven't done it.
Well, that is our modern way, very modern, very recent, last 50 years way of perceiving ourselves. That, you know, everything would have been fine if it hadn't been for us.
Also, if you consider that actions speak louder than words, we may need to lip service to saving the planet, but what are we actually doing every day?
Well, what would be the value of saving the planet? What is something good? No, really. I mean, in the scheme of things, what is something good for?
We're coming to that time.
Right, but I think that's what we've got. That's what we've got to say something about.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, you like it. But on the one hand, it's irrelevant to the universe.
Yeah.
On the other hand, anything that you love is valuable.
Yeah. When God says it's good.
If it's a dinner, that's valuable. Just as valuable as let there be light.
So we've established that this story rebuts our feeling of insignificance. In what way might it rebut our feeling of being a negative impact on creation? We seem to be the pinnacle, don't we, in this story? We seem to be
we're the image of God.
And in the image of God.
We're good.
We're good. We're incredible.
We're lovable.
We're bad.
Incredible.
We're bad. we bad.
We're so bad. We're so bad. And our role in creation surely is the highest of all the creatures, right? We are meant to be the regents of God. We are meant to express God's love and joy and care and provision for all that he's made. We surely have the highest role in creation when we do it, right? It's not that we're a bad influence or a drain of creation. It's that we have the capacity to be like God toward the creation, loving it, caring for it, providing for it, and in some way ruling and administering God's providence over it. So I just find this astonishing that this 7-day earth-centric creation account provides really necessary and important antidotes for our modern assumptions that we make based on our modern science. But that according to this, we're not right. And that's why we need to understand this story so deeply. We have every reason to rejoice in what God has created and done and how he's placed us in the creation and the role he's given us in the creation. And instead, we often get stuck in feelings that we are totally insignificant and, if anything, of a negative influence on creation. So, we have a bit of time. So before we get into a few of the issues,
and something just occurred to me, I'm not sure, probably heard everybody long before this, but this story and the conversation we're having seems to reinforce the whole broader concept of environmental justice. God has given us this marvelous gift of the universe, birds and light and everything. And as with anything, we have a responsibility to take good care of it and to demonstrate our gratitude for that. So responsibility and gift seem to go hand in hand.
And as you suggested with environmental justice, to make sure that the gifts of the creation are shared among all the creatures.
Which has been something that more people recently have been trying to do than they were trying to do in the past, because the whole concept of environmental safety is a relatively new idea because for many, probably hundreds of years, the humans have did what they did for the environment. God put us in charge of it. As our science evolved, we realized that we're doing more harm than good to the planet.
Yes. And I think the more we Christians understand the theological basis of why we're here, what we're meant to do, who God is, who we are, what the creation is all about, the more motivated we are. Yeah, thanks for that insight. Okay, so we're going to take a tiny break, and anybody who wants to say what brings you joy in the natural world.
Sunrise.
Sunrise.
Like sunset. I love sunset. Equal opportunity.
Rocks.
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 I'm not too familiar.
So say a little more about that.
So I have an application stone sculpture, and so seeing what's in just the plain old rocks is quite amazing. Bring out a little of what's going on in that, shopping and amazing.
Don't we live in a place where we can enjoy
Running water.
Clean water.
I mean, Indian pool.
yes, yes,
The ocean.
right. Water, miracle of water.
Vast expanse of it.
Oh my,
You look down the valley and you see the peaks of water.
yeah.
And it just goes and goes.
What would you
And
like?
that doesn't even get to what
They can see that.
They can see that. And those
So
that's who's
next
here.
week, here's your assignment.
But they've
We're not
turned off
finished yet,
their-
But here's your assignment for next week. It's show and tell. Bring one thing. Bring one thing and be able to tell us what is so marvelous about this one thing you have brought.
Wait, next week?
Next week.
From nature.
Don't forget that we also are nature. I'll bring.
Can I bring this?
Yes, you can. You can bring this.
You're gonna put this in a jar.
One rock.
One rock. So that's the sign up for next week. But now,
All right, remind me, I'm gonna bring a breath.
okay. We'll try to remind you that. Now we're going to come back to that image of God speaking. I just love this image, and you know, when you think about it, the first thing that comes to my mind is, you know, he was not speaking English.
He was speaking.
What was he speaking? What was the language?
Well, he wasn't speaking our English. He was speaking King James.
King James.
He brought to us the word. And the word was the truth.
There you go. I love it, Paul.
John 1:1.
Yep.
Oh, you're jumping.
It goes on and on and on. Beautiful language.
Beautiful language. But clearly the language of creation is a language that can be understood by people who can't read books, right? This is a language that God speaks that is available to. And now I'm thinking, if we had a perfect language, which we don't, if we had a perfect language, what could it do for us?
There would be no misunderstanding.
There would be no misunderstandings. What else? Very good. Sorry?
Bring everybody together.
It would bring everybody together.
So are you saying, I mean, I guess what I thought I heard you saying was that creation is a language that we all share, and if we could pay attention to it, we would
Have
come
that in
together.
common, at least.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the light is a word.
Incredible, a weird,
Every creature is a word, part of the grammar of creation.
yeah. Isn't it sort of almost too much to grasp? I mean, it's really too much to articulate. And I think that one thing, if we had a perfect language, it would be able to distill our hearts and minds perfectly. It would be able to communicate our hearts and minds perfectly. And isn't
Would
that,
we see it with the same eyes?
well,
Had that perfect word.
But isn't that what the language of creation is?
isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't
So, I mean, we have the language and it does articulate. And the question is whether we will adopt that language rather than impose upon it some other language that
it's our language.
brings confusion to it
Yeah.
instead of entering into the language that's been given to us.
Indeed. And isn't that language what we see when we pay attention to creation?
Yeah.
Isn't it a drop of the essence of God's heart and mind?
Yeah.
when we look at creation, when we pay attention, and he has spoken it in this perfect language, doesn't it distill for us some piece of God's heart and mind?
This is still written by humans.
Indeed it was, but the creation wasn't.
Yeah.
Written by humans trying to give voice to the language of creation.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yes. So can we then say that the distilled essence of God's mind and heart in material form is the cosmos, as Paul pointed out earlier, in human form, the distilled essence of God's heart and mind is our Lord Jesus. The Word made flesh. The Word created in the cosmos, and the Word made flesh. The distillation of God's heart and mind, communicating for us, to us, in a way that we can observe it and understand it. To me, that's, yikes, gives me a little bit of a shudder. But here's another question. So what's it for? What is all of this for? Tuck said earlier, what difference would it be if the Earth disappeared? What is all of this cosmos for?
You say it's for the glory of God.
Yes. We have a tendency, if we're not thinking too clearly, don't we, to think that, well, it's for us. It was made for our home. It's, it's where we live. It's for us. But isn't that a little bit like the rats in New York who think that New York City is for them? I mean, it's true that at certain times of day, they do have dominion. It's true that it is a perfect habitation for them.
Don't your dogs think you're there for them?
Yes. Don't we all have that feeling that it's for us? And yet, those rats, they're missing a lot, aren't they? There's a lot they don't know. There's just a lot they don't know.
Take it personally.
Yeah.
It's kind of we're part of an ongoing experiment too. We may be experiential. Maybe a part of God's experiment.
Paul, that is so existential. I can't.
It's a possibility.
I don't even know how to think about that. So, as Tuck said, when you walk a dog, you become very aware that there's a lot going on that you don't know about, right?
That's true.
And when you watch the bats flying around, they're hearing stuff that we can't hear. And when you do most anything, I mean, we had no idea that all those points of light in the sky were not stars, but galaxies and groups of galaxies that now we've seen. There's a lot going on that we have no contact with. In fact, if our models are correct, 95% of what exists is dark matter and dark energy. And that doesn't mean it's covered in blackness.
Or that it's evil.
Shone a light on it, we could see it. It means that we have no way to perceive it. 95%. There's just a lot going on that we don't know about. We're not in touch with. And that really changes our outlook, doesn't it, on what this is all about? Because surely, as Tuck said, it's for God. He's the only one who can see, apprehend, and enjoy all of it. Not us, not any of the other creatures, only God. has it all.
But since God isn't in it, right, and isn't part of it materially, there's an equal reason to think that there is no God as that there is a God.
If you don't have Genesis chapter 1 in front of you.
Well, Genesis chapter 1 is a claim,
right,
not a proof.
right. But it's a
How do you
claim,
know God isn't?
but it's
with
a
us?
claim that is given to us to rebut those very misconceptions that we have.
Well, all I mean is you can't conceive or take the dark matter. You can't perceive God any more than you can perceive the dark matter. You can deduce God, perhaps, but the evidence is just as likely to lead some people to a deduction that there is no God.
Isn't that why faith
Yeah.
is?
Well, all I'm saying is, yeah, just that God is beyond our ability to conceive or prove or articulate. And so to talk about God is an act of faith, not an act of science.
Right. Knowledge is not everything.
Like God and many other things. We claim that there is, we claim that there is God based on all the scriptures and the Bible and stuff. Mm-hmm. There's no actual quote unquote hard evidence saying that,
right,
proving that there is or is not God. There's just faith.
In some ways, I think it is accurate to describe it as a lead. And yet, we have so much to guide us into that lead, to base that lead. Not least of which is our own experience of God. And indeed, we have our eyes open to the voice of creation.
We can take a walk. We can walk right by flowers and not notice it. The miracle, the beach blossom, the sky, the clouds. It's our opening ourselves up to the miracle of what's been created.
So important, isn't it? Pay attention. Yes, pay attention. So let me give you this image. So in one of the Chronicles of Narnia, which one is it that does creation? Magician's Nephew. C.S. Lewis has this beautiful image. I just love it. Of God, who is Aslan, and he sings the creation into existence. And as every creature comes into being, it joins in the song in its own voice. So the stars are singing, and the animals are all singing with their voices, and the plants and the flowers and the trees are all joining into this song that Aslan sings as he brings each thing into being. And to me, that really answers the question, why were we created? It's to join that song.
Basically, one of the sources that God created us because he wanted a companion. Because he wanted somebody who could go back and forth with him. And Jesus made this possible because he helped us to understand who God was. But that he really wanted a companion that he could share.
I think that's a lovely thought. It does to me, though, bring up possible misunderstanding in that we might think that God was lonely. God wanted more. It was not lonely. He had overflowing, I think, of love and joy that brought all of this into existence, including us who could worship him. Yeah, that's great. So we add our voice to the song of everything that's in the cosmos. Our human voice, as you said, is added to all these voices that are singing with God the song of creation. We have time for one more thing. So let's do one more thing. One more thing to bring out of this text, I think, might be at the crux of our anxiety. And that is, we have this foreboding that God could be looking down at creation now and saying, instead of, oh, it's good, it's very good, he could be saying, well, it was good, you know, or it is very good except for the humans. You know, don't we have that sort of sense that perhaps God is disappointed?
Has withdrawn his grace.
Or has withdrawn his grace, or that we've ruined it.
Not deserving.
What?
We aren't deserving.
We aren't deserving.
That's almost by design, because he also gave us free will to make choices.
Yeah. Indeed, he did. When God said, it's good, you know, 7 times, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's good, it's very good. What did he mean by that? Did he mean, okay, it's good now, but in chapter 3, it goes bad?
Didn't take long.
Yeah. Oh, you know, what did he mean when he says it's good? Well, you know, I think it's really important for us to really think deeply about this, because when God said it was good, he wasn't looking at a moment in time, right? God is out here, and he's looking at everything that ever was, everything that is now, and everything that ever will be. And he says it's very good. It's not like Genesis 3 was a surprise to God, right? It's not like human sin took God off guard. It's not like we're living in a cosmic plan B, a divine plan B of God, because we screwed it up the first time and he had to come up with a solution. Even that thing where it said everything is only evil all the time. Is that part of the very good? He saw us with all of our capacity for good, all of our capacity for evil, all that had ever been and all that ever will be, and he declared it very good. So I want to go back to a very old-fashioned word, but since I grew up a Presbyterian, it's familiar to me, and that word is providence. So providence refers really to 3 things. There are 3 aspects of providence. The first is God's sovereignty over everything he's made, complete rule and sovereignty over everything he's made. The second is God's care and provision for everything he's made, right? He brings the rain on the just and the unjust. God provides, as we saw in chapter 1, food for the whole creation and everything that they would need. And the third aspect of providence is that God has an eternal purpose, and that he's moving everything in heaven and on earth through all time to the ends for which he has created. And those ends cannot be fulfilled. We can mess God up, right? God is moving everything toward the intention that he had for it from the beginning. And that to me is the most reassuring thing, that we can't thwart God. You know, we haven't ruined his plan. God is in charge of all of this, and he's bringing it to some good and very good conclusion. He says it's very good. It's very good. It will be very, very, very good.
There's a flip side, though. It was very beautiful what you expressed, very inspiring. I can't help think about the flip side of Providence. I lost the thought there. But you said God is in charge of everything. Can't help thinking about everything that's going on in the world now. Floods, droughts, famine, civil war, you name it, just the tragedies. Every day of the news we see these tragedies. So
very good, Anna. And we're going to deal with that at some length next week.
Is God still in charge of everything?
What is all of these disasters? You know, I call it the baby seal problem. Like, you know, you see all the nature films, and the baby seals are just trying to do their little thing, and the great white shark is coming, and its mouth is open, you know, and it's, this is terrible. This is terrible. The baby seal problem. And it is very closely tied in with wars and famines. It's like nature red and choose a fall, right? It's the Garden of Eden is one thing, and this other business is another thing. Let's talk about that at some point tomorrow, next week.
So we have to bring something.
And don't forget to bring something that gives you joy or causes you awe in creation. Great? Okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
And hopefully I'll see you this week. Well, we don't have anything set up. You know what? I'll go home and do that. I'll just send up. I will. And hopefully I'll see you this
Good
week.
to see you.
Aw. So glad to see you in a
Different context. I know. Double fault. Exactly.
Oh, she's got to let them know that she has. Oh, she's really very about it then. I had a phone conversation yesterday, and it's so not that says it's grudging. I think I asked her to send she should say to me, and I'll look at it.
Interesting last name, Mason. Yeah. When did you start that?
5 years ago.
So you had your own little masonry?
Yeah, well, we built this barn on our property.
Yeah.
Do it outside.
Yeah.
Because it is incredibly messy and very dust.
Wow. You got good things about you.
I'll bring one.
Yeah.
I mean, you're tackling them.